All right.
Well, thanks.
We're official.
So I'm Mary Katherine. Okay, Katherine, I use she, her pronouns. I just said yesterday, which was the first time I actually realized it, that I am approaching the 40th anniversary of my ordination as a Unitarian Universalist minister, 27. So it's not far from I'm also celebrating my 40th wedding anniversary this fall. So 40 is the number for this year. I mostly in my career have served UU congregations, and I did it mostly in the Deep South. I went to seminary in Texas. I served a congregation in Auburn, Alabama for a little while, Macon, Georgia, Nashville, Tennessee. And then I moved all the way north to Fairfax, Virginia. So we were neighbors actually for a minute. We didn't know it. And then after about 28 years, I moved and did some service at the Unitarian Universalist Association. And after 4 years there, I came to UUSC. Does everyone know what UUSC is? Yes. Yes. Fantastic. That's wonderful. The reason I came to UUSC, I was planning to go back into the congregation because I love being a parish minister. It's such a, thank you, it's such a privilege being a parish minister. And I loved 94% of it. So most of it.
Yeah.
But when I applied for the job at UUSC as president and CEO, and as a part of the process for applying, I discovered what UUSC does. Now, remember, I've been a UU minister for decades, and I had no idea the depth and breadth of UUSC's work. And when I discovered that, I found my calling. And my calling is to try to ensure that more and more Unitarian Universalists know about UUSC, because the work is phenomenal. It's making a difference in the world. It's carrying our values to the world. And I feel so deeply privileged to have this role, to lead this organization, and mostly to bring UUSC to Unitarian Universalists. We have a staff, just a few kind of basic facts. We have a staff of, well, actually, I'll do this next. Well, will I do this? There's a little arrow. I'll go to this. Do you know the story of the founding of UUSC? Some of you do, some do not. So this is Martha and Wade Still Sharp. They were, he was the minister at Wellesley Hills in Massachusetts. Why did the people in Prague reach out to the American Unitarian Association to ask for help as Hitler was getting close? What a strange thing. The Unitarians became the source of US aid at the beginning of World War II in Prague. Weird, right? The largest Unitarian church in the world was in Prague at the time. The minister, see if you know this name, Norbert Chapin, the fellow who originated the Flower Communion and who was killed in the Holocaust for his practicing his faith. And furthermore, the president of Czechoslovakia at the time was married to a Unitarian woman. So there were deep connections and relationship. I tell that in part to lift up the way relationship is so much a part of our work. Building trusting relationships with communities that are impacted by abuses of human rights and working together with them to address those abuses. So Martha and Wade Still went to Prague in 1939. They literally got out over the cover of dark at night, escaping the Gestapo, went back to Lisbon, and their work was primarily helping people escape, getting out. That thread, that core of the work continues today, working with people who are forced to leave their homes because of war, violence, the criminalization of their identity, whether it, their citizenship, their gender, their race, their religion. Right now, we're working with folks in Burma who are being bombed by their own government because of their religion and their ethnicity. Now, more than ever, almost everyone we work with is facing the threat of displacement because of climate change. So those pieces come together. So we talk about our work as the work of climate justice, migration justice, and disaster justice. And by that, we mean something very important, because in times of disasters, when there's a humanitarian crisis, what actually happens uniformly is that the people who had a lot of resources and benefits before the crisis have more after the crisis, and the people who have few have less after the crisis. So our hope is to work with communities that are working toward just response to humanitarian crises and building systems that prevent that kind of inequality from being perpetuated in response to disasters. So that's broadly what our work is. I'm going to tell a story about some of our work to kind of illustrate how we do it in just a second. Those are just fun pictures. I think maybe you'll find them fun. The picture on the right is from a meeting in Thailand, in Bangkok, that some of us got to attend. I'm not in that picture, but I was there. We helped sponsor the Feminist Forum on displacement. There's another word. But it's with the Women in Migration Network. We helped fund this gathering of people from around the world talking about the impact of displacement on women, and particularly on migrant worker women. So at the meeting were women who are domestic workers, migrant domestic workers who are organizing to get rights. They were advocating during this conference. Their big push was to get all of us to join them in advocating for a day off. We have the National Labor Relations Board. There's a comparable, I knew it at the moment, but I don't remember what it is, a comparable international framework for labor rights. And they were fighting to get that body to say that the right thing is to give people one day off a week. Yeah. So that was a very powerful experience. Up in the upper left, that is actually that's all UUSC staff and 2 board members in New York during the Commission on the Status of Women this last March, when we were there with Women in Migration Network and some other groups advocating for women's rights not to be turned back. I want to not talk about that right now, and I want to tell you a story about some of our climate justice work that is illustrative of how we do our work, because that's really the key for UUSC in carrying UU values into the work of human rights and response to disaster around the world. So does anybody remember the human right to water? The UUSC's project, the human right to water, that was a pretty significant, some congregations got pretty involved. California, actually, in California, the work we did helped to facilitate the passing of a law to create a fund to ensure that all people have access to water. That happened, I think, 2009, 2010, I don't know exactly, but not quite 20 years ago. And I learned 3 years ago that California, after passing it that long ago, finally funded the initiative. That's how the work is. All of our work is long, long range. It's the work of change that takes generations, and we're in it for the long haul. But that work, the human right to water, put us in touch with an activist. We had a consultant named Salote Soko. She's a Fijian woman who is now our director of advocacy. She's come to UUSC, and she helped us build out a strategy for our climate justice work in the early 2010s around climate forced displacement. You hear that phrase all the time now, climate forced displacement. In 2010, you did not. People were not talking about it. UUSC actually funded one of the first and created one of the first reports on funding communities impacted by climate forced displacement. So that's been used by other INGOs and governments as well. One of the things we did early in the development of that portfolio of work is we gathered communities impacted by climate change and facing displacement at a convening. We went to Anchorage, Alaska, and brought people from the Pacific to Anchorage, Alaska, from Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, a number of Pacific nations, Bangladesh, and also indigenous communities from South Louisiana and Alaska, a number of native tribes who are impacted by climate in a number of different ways. And we brought them together for a week. They set the agenda. They created an agenda for the week, which included working together on a framework for how countries should deal with communities being displaced, which of course centered on the notion of self-determination, the value of communities being able to participate in the process and maintain and preserve culture, the existential necessities really or impacts of being displaced from your community, and particularly indigenous peoples who are, I mean, one of the ways we define indigenous people is people who are deeply tied to the land on which they live. And so the impact, right, on a community that identifies and their identity arises from the land is very severe. I got to be at that. It was right after I started at UUSC, and I got to watch for the first 2.5 days, all of the communities represented gave a very moving presentations on what they were facing, what the challenges were, what some of the things they were doing that were working, were sharing ideas with each other, even across contexts that were really different. There were still threads of commonality that they could learn from each other. Watching the group create this framework statement that actually got adopted by the nation of Fiji. And then the other thing that came out of it was a whole strategy on legal redress for the impacts that were happening. So we created a legal coalition. And since that time in 2018, just a lot of work has been happening. One of the groups represented at that meeting are the Pacific Climate Warriors. They're fairly well known at this point. A picture of them was widely seen during the first climate convening. Ms. Thornburg, remember, skipped school and called for everybody to the climate strike, the youth climate strike. And the Pacific Climate Warriors had this wonderful image on social media of 8 or so of them. I actually have a picture of it, but not in this slide deck, standing in the water, holding a massive sign that said, "We are not drowning, we are fighting." Really powerful community of activists working to address what's happening. A few years later, a group of students at the Law School of the Pacific got an assignment to come up with an international legal strategy to address the impacts of climate change. So they're students, there are 24 of them or so in a classroom. And they developed a plan to call on the United Nations to call on, the International Court of Justice to issue an advisory opinion setting forth a framework for accountability for climate justice. Okay, let me say it again. They wanted the UN, so the UN can ask the International Court of Justice to study an issue and publish an opinion about it. And what the students said is that this is needed because there are no international frameworks for accountability for climate. And as we all know, many, many people are profiting from the destruction of their homelands. And so these students wanted to call on the International Court of Justice to demand accountability for the harm that nations and corporations are creating in destroying their homelands. So because we knew the Pacific Climate Warrior and had really close relationships, and I want to credit Salote, my colleague, for helping to build those really strong relationships. We were among the first people that the Pacific Island students reached out to. They presented the paper to a Pacific forum and just kind of got a pat on the back, essentially. But after they wrote their project for school, they got really serious about this. And so they came to us, and the first thing we did, and this is one thing about UUSC, we are very often the first funder for small groups who are trying new things. We can take that risk. Unitarian Universalists are not afraid to try something new and to take a chance on a group, so long as, right, it's the community that's impacted, because we know they're the ones who have the wisdom to develop a solution to what's happening. So what we funded for them, the first thing we did was we funded their travel to participate in the International Climate Conference. You hear that every winter, you hear about COP, right? And it happens all over the world, the COP conference. And we sent them to Brazil. We paid, and we had staff there as well, helped make some introductions. They met Greenpeace. They met Amnesty International. They met 350.org. And they developed a larger network of larger organizations and started to build their project. After that, we got them an apartment. We have a supporter who is in New York some of the time. Well, this is Vishal in the photograph. He and his partner at the time, Solomon, needed to be in New York for 4 months. We got them an apartment. We got them credentials to be at the United Nations. We're not giving them $100,000 grants in a year. Our grants typically are between $25,000 and $40,000 a year. But the support we can provide to them is strategic, and it's relational. And so we supported them being there. And then they came to our board meeting actually the next year after they kicked their campaign off. And it was so inspiring, because here are these young adults who believe that they can get the UN to do something. Right.
In the international court. And
and so you had to just smile and say, we need people imagining what we can't imagine and trying to make things happen. And knowing that their campaign would make a difference. No matter what happened, they were helping people understand what was going on in the Pacific, telling their stories. Well, do you want to know what they did?
yeah.
They got the UN to pass a resolution calling on the International Court of Justice to issue an advisory opinion.
That's awesome.
In March the following year, the UN, by unanimous consent, passed this resolution. Salote was in the room with Vishal and Solomon and some others when they took this vote. Unanimous consent allowed the United States and others to be silent. What are you going to do? So this picture is from December this year. So that was March of, I want to say 2020. It must have been 2023, March of 2023. I guess that's right. Boy, time since COVID. Or is it just that I'm old? It's one of those things. I'm not sure. But it took a long time. And in December, the court had their hearing at The Hague. So this is at The Hague. This is actually in the court. But outside the court, what UUSC was doing, we had 4 staff with some of the organizers from the Pacific Island students, because they held outside of the court a people's assembly, because most people can't get in the room, but they have stories to tell. And so one of the the things we really value that our partners do is bring their voices, and facilitating and funding, getting people who aren't invited into the halls of power to be nearby and adjacent and have the opportunity to tell their stories. That's a huge part of what we value and what we fund with our partners. So outside, Vishal got to be in the room to offer his testimony, but there were 100 people gathered at the People's Assembly, and representatives from all over the world telling about the impacts of climate. And this week, we expect to receive the advisory opinion. Our comms team is getting ready for a big press push, and we'll have more to ask of you in terms of helping us get the word out about what the International Court of Justice has said. We know it's a hard push. You know, people aren't. It's a hard time, and we're not going to stop advocating for what we know is right, and supporting communities bringing their demands to the world. So what I like to do is describe what we mean when we talk about partnership and what we do with our partners, and telling that story, I hope, helps. So our programs team has different divisions. The partnership and grant making team is the team that is the primarily front-facing relational piece with our partners. Our advocacy team has some partners too that aren't grant receiving necessarily, but that we work in coalition with. But all of our partners have the opportunity to work with our advocacy team, whether on US advocacy. Very frequently we are on the Hill, even now, my friends, advocating for Burma. And after the earthquake, we did some advocacy. We did just cancel a trip to the Hill because our partners from Burma really aren't safe coming to the United States at this point. And so we're having to shift a lot of things. But let me get back to the kind of framework. So partnership and grant making, advocacy, research. Remember, I talked about the report we did on funding communities facing climate force displacement. If a partner is so here's another example of a research project we did recently. We worked with the communities in southeastern Burma because there wasn't news getting out about what the military was doing. And so they actually hired researchers to go around to the villages, a very dangerous job, and track the bombing, where they were bombing, how frequently, was it drones, is there a ground attack? And we were able to bring that research that they pulled together, that we helped fund, to the Hill. I actually was in a meeting a couple of years ago, a year ago, March, with USAID and the State Department, and they had no idea. You know, this was actually information that was useful to them because at that time they cared. And there was a USAID. So that's research. So partnership and grant making, advocacy, research, strategic comms is another tool that we put in the kind of work that we do with partners. A great example of strategic communications. We're working with a coalition of groups from the diaspora of Haiti who are trying to create a real democracy in Haiti. Now, before you say, well, that's hopeless, because
we weren't going to say that.
Thank you. But boy,
It's a job. Uphill.
just what I try to remember is how long it took to get us here. And that we just have to be in the work, even though we know it's not going to happen next week. Now, okay, I'm bad at going off on stories. Sorry. When we were in Burma in December, and we were meeting with our partners, we were there when Assad fell in Syria. And our partners, you should have seen their faces when they started sharing the news, because they really believe that they are about to defeat the military in Burma and get back to a democracy. May it be so. Okay, so that's and so I didn't get to the strategic comms part. One of the things that's so important with the Haiti is helping people understand what's actually happening. Do you know the history of Haiti? I know a lot of people do. You know that they were the first to be emancipated and to be free from France early. And as in response, France said, well, we're losing all this labor, so you owe us this millions and millions and millions of dollars. Now, this was hundreds of, I don't know how long ago. I should know the history better than I do.
1930s.
Thank you. And they're still in debt from that. And so that just absurd colonialist point of view that has continued is just so interwoven in Haiti. The other thing that's happened in Haiti is that the good-hearted white people, mostly from the West, have tried to help with a very colonialist approach, which has not helped. It has perpetuated the cycles in Haiti. And so the group we work with is a group that talks about the Haitian solution to the challenge of Haiti and getting the narratives out about where they've come from, what they're trying to do, what's possible. And one of their main things is, don't call us hopeless. That's what one of the biggest barriers they have is that everyone just shrugs their shoulders about Haiti. And so we were part of a project that helped place a Haitian writer who's part of this coalition getting an op-ed in the New York Times. We helped an indigenous group in Southwest Texas get in the Houston Chronicle. They've been trying for months and months to get their story told about the fracking that was happening on their land. And so strategic communications are about narrative and helping communities tell their stories, and it can take a lot of different forms, but those are a couple of examples.
Seems like I remembered whether it was 5 or 10 years ago before the latest, disasters and events happened, that there was some pretty good demonstration projects on the ground. It seems like I remember that. Is that
In Haiti, I'm sorry.
Yeah, in Haiti in particular, as an example of,
Oh, yes,
things
thank
that
you.
you do that are just very working directly with people.
Yeah.
Eco
Eco-villages.
villages, yeah, that was an example.
That's
And that's the kind of work that I think is another huge area that's
It is. So
attractive to
Haiti,
know about
thank
in
you.
Haiti and other places.
That's right. I'll say another one. Thanks for that. Really concrete. I do love the kind of strategy and the theory. So getting me back down to earth is really good. I appreciate that. In Haiti, after the earthquake, we partnered with a nonprofit. Oh, I must have their name. I wasn't around, so I'm not as connected with them. But they had a vision for sustainable eco-villages in the rural areas. People were getting support and finding food and what they needed in the cities. But people in the rural areas were struggling. And so the idea was to create a model for how to help people build their own sustainable community. And there were, I think, 3 eco-villages that got built. Some UUs actually traveled and supported this project with manual labor. It's not very often that our partners need our physical help, but they did in that case. And the other group that I will lift up along those lines is an organization called FEM, FEM, in Nicaragua. And these are women who are organizing other women. The rate of femicide in Nicaragua is startling, devastating. And so they are working with women who are leaving partnerships or men who are violent against them, and helping create small micro businesses that they can use to support themselves and their children. And now it's been going on for a number of years. So some of the children, boys, are growing into men and are also part of the cooperative. And they're really essentially creating an alternative economy in Nicaragua, which I find so exciting, because I think our own economy is just not sustainable for the long run. Our extraction can't go on forever. Cherry.
How is that helping the problem of femicide?
Well, so what they do is, while they're giving people, so that's a great question. I really appreciate that, because all of our partners are doing 2 things. They are helping people with their immediate need to survive, and they are working on systemic change in the community. That's just kind of what we believe is important, is supporting groups that are creating change so that the issues that they face will not be faced in future generations. So they do education of women, civic education, they do education in the community. They actually work with the police on reporting and investigating and dealing with the crimes of violence against women. So a whole suite of things that they are doing to address the violence against women and also the women's capacity to take care of themselves.
By helping businesses, micro businesses.
Exactly.
Then they. Can
So that
end up,
that's right.
So I have to wonder,
Yes.
how are they successful working with police with so much corruption
Right.
there?
And so when I hear that, I always think, oh gosh, you're going to report it to the police. That's just not going to, and they have, I've heard actually not just FEM, but some other groups as well say, we have to continue to report because otherwise it remains, under, nobody talks about it. And they don't expect that it will always be addressed, but they are very, very strong about the importance of reporting.
And is that reporting documented anywhere?
It's a very legitimate question that I don't have the answer to. I don't know. And we've had people, actually, we had a staff person visiting FEM a year and a half ago. It's touch and go going to Nicaragua right now. But my colleague Lindsay was there recently. So I am afraid I am sitting before you with like 20% of the information that my colleagues have. They have a lot of the information. So if there's a particular question, I am glad to go to them and find out more. I was going to tell a little more. Linda, you doing okay? Do you want to chime in at all? You don't have to. And stepping away from Zoom is also good. I'm sorry I called you out, Linda. Yeah. I was going to tell you a little more about the trip to Burma. Just I had this picture of a girls' school that we help support in Burma. The woman on the far right in the blue and the scarf is Mara Dagapa. She's our program officer for disaster response. She's a Burmese woman who got out of Burma about 25 years ago, maybe even 30, in one of the early times of great conflict. She escaped. Not all of the members of her family escaped. It's
you on the right also.
And I am there. I am standing behind her. Yes, I am. We are visiting a Karen women's organization school where they are training these women in civic education and organizing. We got there just really quickly, the story. We got there and realized that they thought we were coming like later or the next day. They weren't ready for us.
After Unitarian.
They were not ready. And so it was a little awkward for a moment. But we finally all sat down in a room and everybody said their names. Myra was really supportive as a translator. And then after everybody introduced themselves, there was this moment of silence, that awkward moment. And I'm not great, I'm good at filling a vacuum. So I'm, kind of on the edge, about to stand up. And a young woman from the back of the room stands up and walks to the front of the room. And Myra gets up and stands beside her. And she tells the story of her family's village that was bombed. The fields were burned, and then landmines were set. So they were forced into the jungle. She talked about being in the jungle and the drones finding them. So and the reason that was important is because they were working to set up schools. The mothers were so determined that the children and the girls would get an education that every time they moved, they would try to set it up. Finally, this young woman's mother was so frustrated, she sent her daughter to one of the refugee camps because she knew she would get. And it was out of that camp that she was able to make it to the school. So she told her story. She told us her story. Then she gave us an analysis, a political analysis of what's happening in Burma, what they're doing to try to fight what's happening, how they believe a multi-ethnic democracy is possible. And then she said what they need from us. I think she was 19.
Wow.
And it was as good as any TED Talk I've ever heard. And then two other girls stood up and told their own story. and made their own case. It was so powerful. It was one of those moments where I knew the importance of what we're doing, that our support for this work in creating leaders in this context of so much crisis, just incredibly powerful. So it was a true privilege to be there. This is, you see my cursor, this is Rachel. She is our head of program. She's an international human rights lawyer. Myra, I introduced, I'm here. And then this, she's in the shade. That's a little difficult to see. Katherine is one of our board members. She's a medical doctor, in the back right, standing. And she, one of the things we did on the trip was visit an eye clinic that we helped to build. That's kind of unusual for work for us to fund an eye clinic, but you know, it was one of those, you know, they needed this much more money to make it happen, and we were able to do it. And we crossed the river from Thailand to get into Burma to see it. It was a little scary, but very moving. And Katherine was able to provide support and actually follow up with the doctor about some of the things that were happening. So it was a very moving opportunity to be there with them. I do want to get to, and I'll try to do this in 5 minutes. I've just talked so much, I'm sorry. To our response since the election. A lot's happened, and just to lift up a few things. First of all, we had prepared ourselves. We, you know, mapped out all the scenarios. We called some of our partners, including Pink Haven, which is an organization in the United States that supports people who are trans, families who have people who are trans, who are moving from unsafe states to safer states. It's essentially an underground railroad for people who are trans to move to a place where they can get health care and they're not afraid for their lives. Well, I think trans people everywhere in the world right now are afraid for their lives, but moving to a somewhat safer state. We called Pink Haven before the election. If this were to happen, what would you need? They told us exactly what they would need, and we sent them $80,000 3 days after the election to help fund immediate response for them. Also, some work with migrant justice groups that we're already affiliated with, immediate grants for know your rights and hotlines and that kind of thing. And after the initial response, we received, the board made available to us $1.5 million from our reserves to provide as supplemental grants on top of our regular partnership grants, not just for partners in the United States, because now what we know is partners around the world are impacted by this administration because of the horrific decisions related to foreign assistance and USAID.
Yeah, I can see a need for a whole bunch more underground railroads. You will have women trying to find abortions, you'll have various immigrants, undocumented people, and just people fleeing a bad political situation. I can see the day when we're gonna have to have internal passports. So we have to be prepared for that as well.
What do you mean by internal passports? I mean,
And to move around from state to state or jurisdiction to
So-
jurisdiction.
Further
Yeah.
restrictions on our movement.
So Texans can't come to Colorado for an abortion, for instance.
Right,
Yeah, and there's laws in place to attack
There are.
people and doctors, so
I could see a
it's
fusion.
not outrageous to consider. It's already there in not controls, but after the fact punishment.
Yeah, and then there's I can see the possibility of internal passports. What was next? I forget what came next.
It's a daunting potential future.
But we've got to be ready to do things like that, and also security.
So a couple of the things that we've done, we've hired a security firm.
I mean, operational security.
Yes,
People need not to know not to use electronic communication.
yes, there's this security, right? Lost my words.
Yeah.
And there's also physical security. People are being taken in the street.
Oh.
Yes, you remember.
I'm involved on the grassroots level with many things. And we've got the city council under attack from MAGA types. We've got state legislature under attack.
And can I just say, it's gonna take all of us. And what we're trying to do at UUSC is figure out where can we bring, what we do to the situation. So we can't do it all. But what can we do and how can we support people who are doing the things they're doing? So a number of ways we're doing that. And though we are not talking about this widely, we have already been targeted by the House Committee on Homeland Security. And we've got a security firm, we've got a new lawyer. I never imagined we'd have to spend this kind of money on legal, but we will, because this is not the last thing they're going to threaten us with. Our 501c3 status, I don't know how long we'll have that. I don't know if we'll be able to do climate work under our 501c3. So we're creating a 501c4 so that if we have to move our climate work, we'll have a place to put it. We're working with other organizations on helping our partners, our legal support for the congressional hearing. We also made available to some of our partners who are also on that list. So we're working hard to be where we can be and be one of the systems that's addressing the multiple ways civil society is being dismantled and criminalized for the sake of the power and wealth of a few. Yes, please, Clay.
What about Gaza? Is UUSC in Gaza?
Great question. UUSC has not been in the Middle East for a couple of decades. And over the last 5 years, we have, and our, the way we work is that whatever we decide to fund or move forward comes from our partners. So if we don't have partners somewhere, we're not off doing typically, but with Gaza, when Israel started criminalizing some of the nonprofits, we spoke out in coalition with other NGOs. And we have been calling since before this last horrific time of war for the US to stop funding the Israeli military. And we're not funding, and we actually have sent 2 emergency grants to a partner organization that is in Gaza, has relationships there, and is providing support. It was yesterday, I think, that the latest death toll was just, and I'm in coalitions with the executive directors of international NGOs, including many that are deeply involved in Gaza and have lost staff in this war.
Right.
I'd like to I have a friend who went on a hunger strike, and I've never imagined doing something like that, but it is, thank you for asking and for bringing Gaza into the room. The last thing I'll share is just that we are building out a new area of work related to gender justice and democracy. The authoritarians have cynically capitalized on far-right religious extremist views of women and their rights, of trans people. And this is not just happening in the United States. We've been talking with our partners in Eastern Europe about this for 3 years. So we are going to gather global activists on gender justice in March, probably in Spain, to talk about how we can help fund and create a collaborative strategy I know it sounds grandiose and we're small, but we're going to bring people into the room together because we need a progressive, sometimes religious voice on gender justice and democracy, because they are manipulating people with this hateful ideology and hoarding power and wealth by doing it. Did that make sense? Some of you are nodding. The anti-gender ideology, just Google anti-gender ideology. Okay. And you will get lots of stuff. Greetings, welcome. Nice to see you. So we're very excited about helping to fund this initiative. What it means is that our budget we're still funding all of our partners who need so much right now all over the world and in the United States, and we're going to build out this new area. So if you're not a member of UUSC, we hope you'll join. It takes $40 to become a member of UUSC. If you make a donation of $150, it gets doubled by a congregation in New York. We are not funded by the UUA. Almost all of our money comes from individual people. We don't have big foundation funding. So my having this opportunity, thanks to Steve and Karen, to talk with you is such a gift, to share what we're doing and to invite you to be part of this as members of UUSC. Last thing is we have launched the Resistance Network. And what we're trying to, it's a small thing, but every 2 weeks, if you join the Resistance Network, every 2 weeks, we will send you an email with a simple action. One action that you can take. Last one was on the rescissions. Oh, well, but sample letters to the editor, how to write your representative, and it'll connect you with your representative and that kind of thing. We'll sometimes have international advocacy to lift up. And we're also hoping that we can amplify other people's activism and help people get connected around every small step matters. All we can do right now is the next thing. And we have to be prepared. And your point is we're spending so much time, preparing ourselves for the risks that we know are in front of us and taking the next right step for change. Thank you. I'm sorry. You see, I do love to talk about it, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
How is everybody on time? You want to add? Anybody that can stay, let's say, an extra 15 minutes? Okay,
Yeah, we want info.
okay, that way we can ask questions. And Kathy, we are recording this, so it will be available. What happened before you got here? So do you want to go to Q&A then?
Please.
I will amplify the point about a individual or family can join for $40, and I would love to see Namakwa have 25% of our members join. And
Love it if 100%.
that's the first goal,
Right.
and that will give us a special honor congregation status, in addition to what we already have, thanks to Dana doing special collections in the past, and Doug also made sure that we contributed to USC in the past.
Thank you so much.
Part of our budget, which gave us the James Luther Adams Award in recognition. So the 2023 and 2024 annual reports had Namakwa in there, that we support the things you've been hearing about. The 2025 fiscal year just ended, so the new report will be coming out and show that. And we want to do even more and better in our new fiscal year. So join as individuals and families. MK, or Catherine, can take your checks if you want to do it that way right now, or if you want to get online tonight or tomorrow and join. And I didn't ask you this before, but put a little note there saying Namakwa UU.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Put a little Namakwa UU note on it, because we want to make a mark on the world.
I know, maybe you know that somebody organized the showing of the Sharps War.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
Please tell Dana I'm writing her a thank you note.
Okay.
Give her my thanks in person. I missed her today, so I didn't get to say hi to her.
We have your official one on the bulletin board right there
Good.
from our Christmas collection that gave us that Adams Award. So anyway, once again, the $40 and whatever you want to add on to that, because if it's 150 or more, it's matched. And if you want to go higher, there's all kinds of benefits to the world and to your values as well as to yourself. So we can open it up for Q&A for
Yep.
the next 20 minutes. And
Yeah, I might need to go before that. That's,
okay,
Thanks.
so if you want to ask the first question, I think you have to go.
no, I don't have one. at the
Okay.
moment.
How do organizations find you?
So I said at the beginning, relationship. It really is. Our partners tend to be clumped in regions. So So let's talk about the Pacific. So Salote had done the work on the human right to water. She was already connected with some of the groups. The climate warriors connected us with the Pacific Island students. So it really is that, and our partnership officers travel to regions, learn about what's happening. In Ukraine, this is a good way to answer the question. When the full-scale invasion happened in Ukraine, we heard from you. That's really what happened. I mean, how we decide what we do and what we don't do is one of the more complicated questions. Our no's are, 90% of what we say is no, because there's so much need in the world. And so, in the case of Ukraine, it's a great example because we heard from UUs. We want to help, and we want to help through a group that we trust.
Okay, there are UUs in Ukraine, you're saying.
No, y'all.
Oh.
Y'all who wanted to take a special collection because the invasion happened and you knew there was going to be a migration crisis and the people impacted were going to be Black and brown people, gay, lesbian, trans people, bisexual people, Roma people who are, Roma people, women and girls, and people with disabilities. When we go into a disaster, we focus on the communities that are ignored by the larger mainstream organizations. And so UU said, we'd like to support the crisis we see unfolding. Is UUSC going to respond? Because that would be our first choice. And so we hear that from a lot of people. That helps us. And then we reach out to our partners. Do we know people? Are we the right people to build a response? And we did know people because we had done work in response to Syria, and we knew a group called the Fem Fund in Hungary, and we called them and we said, could we do something? Is there a way you could move money quickly to provide support? They said, absolutely. We hired a consultant. They worked for us for 6 months. We found 10 partners, and now, and we won't do this. We won't say yes if we're going to fly in and fly out, because that's what so many of the INGOs do.
Really?
They fly in, they give some support, and then they're gone. So we made a commitment for 5 years, and we raised over $1 million from Unitarian Universalist to support that work. That came out of our emergency response fund to get it started as we slowly built it into our regular budget.
I feel like that approach is more effective in getting the most bang for the buck compared to a fly in, fly out organization that has more waste, and I won't say fraud or abuse, but
Yeah, so
have less waste and more long-term and short-term impact.
and less taking, less harm. We, when we were finishing our work in Syria, a group, I wasn't part of it, from staff went and closed out the partnerships that we'd been in. And we met with one of the groups, and they said to us, we are so grateful for the way you supported us, because what you did first is you didn't bring in your staff and hire our staff to work with them under your umbrella, which is what many of the large INGOs do. They send staff there. They want to be in charge. They want to decide what happens. They hire local people who've been doing good work for local organizations that then lose their capacity, and they work for 2 years and then they're gone. And so there's less left when that happens. Another story like that is from a Roma group called Toward Dialogue that's based in Warsaw. And we took our board actually a year ago to visit these partners, and the director of that organization said the hardest thing for us, have you heard that one of the problems groups have is that foundations require 25-page applications and then a report every 3 months. So forget doing the work you thought you were going to do, just report to us all the time. Well, we don't do that. Our partnership officers are on the phone with partners, getting the information, doing the work for them, not asking them to do it. This Toward Dialogue told us that, I'm going to name a group, and I love this organization, I'm going to tell you. I do, and I know their executive director, and she's a genius, and you've seen her on TV. Save the Children came in, doing great things, I'll grant you. And Toward Dialogue said, okay, we really need this money. So they had to hire a new person, train them to handle the grant stuff and get it going. They got her up and running. She was 6 months in, they got the grant. Save the Children hired her. Save the Children hired her. So they had to find a new person. And that is the kind of, we don't want to have staff. We want to move money. We want to move money to groups that are effective.
Can you give a little more detail on what you have accomplished in Ukraine then?
Oh, absolutely. So one group in a place called Rakov works with people with disabilities. They were able to, and this is really just direct response to migrant movement and people getting safe. They were able to buy a van with our grant and set up a mobile response unit so that as people were coming across the border, they could provide response. My favorite partner, well, Beyond Dialogue is amazing. The Roma folks, really phenomenal. We helped to fund a conference that happened in Krakow that brought 200 Roma youth from 20 countries in Europe to learn about their history and be in solidarity with each other, because part of why they experience so much oppression is because they're so scattered and not connected, and so not as much strength in that way. But one of my favorite groups in the Ukraine response is called Regeneration, and they support the people who are on the front lines. So they do a respite work for people who are on the border of Belarus. They do support groups for social workers. They do forest walks. They provide grants for a sabbatical. And 6 months after the conflict started, the full-scale invasion, they hosted a retreat for leaders of, 20 or so organizations, not all our partners, some of them were, because almost all of them were on the verge of, burnout is not, burnout doesn't do it. I mean, really utter collapse. They had been working night and day in horrible conditions, having horrible secondary trauma from what was happening. And so we funded a week-long retreat for these organizations and their leaders to provide wellness. Those are just a few of them.
So, Dana submitted a question since she
Good,
couldn't be
please.
here, Monday being her day off, but she was here last week anyway, doing your role. She said she would be interested in hearing, and this is kind of maybe a national question, updated information about their work with immigration, the sanctuary movement, the lawsuit against Trump administration concerning ICE entering places of worship, and whether it's national, international. This might be an impossible question. UUSC's greatest sense of urgency right now, given the political climate. So. Impossible question.
Yeah.
So in terms of the first part.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So our work in migration justice has primarily been in Central America. So it's quite relevant now. And there are a lot of groups working on it. I will tell you that is the subject of the attention we got from the House Committee on Homeland Security, our work on migration justice. And we have a handful of partners in the US who are providing support, but everything's changed. So our big work right now with support for migration justice is under a heading of CAPAS. It stands for Congregational Accompaniment Program with Asylum Seekers. And we work with UU and other congregations that want to support asylum seekers. Now, this is shifting a little because there are fewer asylum seekers, but accompaniment work with people who are in the immigration system. And we have a team at UUSC that provides support to these congregations. I think we have about 30 congregations participating. They talk with each other, exchange resources. We connect them with people who need support. Right now, one of the things we're asking for is accompaniment to court hearings, just to provide, the hope of some shelter. They don't seem worried about showing what they're doing right now, so it's not always helping, but we want to be witness and accompaniment for that. I would say, and I want to say the UUA and our work with the UUA right now is focusing largely on responding to support for people who are trans and impacted by the horrible Supreme Court ruling that is meaning that a lot of people are not going to get health care. It's really a frightening time for people who are trans. And I just want to say that, again, this is a cynical move. Our leaders don't care trans or nothing. They don't care. The percentage of people in Germany in the 1930s who were Jewish, under 5%. I think actually under 1%,
Really?
right around there, through 1 to 3, it was very low, is the same as the percentage of trans people in the United States right now. It's a tactic. And it doesn't stop with trans people, just like it didn't stop with Jews. And so we cannot turn our backs on the front line of where they are attacking. Even if some of us feel a little confused or uncomfortable about it, we cannot turn our backs because it is a tactic to get control, and they're not going to stop there. So that was a little preachy. I'm sorry.
I think that's appreciated.
It's so frightening.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to know what we as a congregation or individuals could do to support trans people.
And so
what's worked on.
And maybe a more difficult question is, beyond as individuals joining UUSC and becoming part of the network, what else can individuals and congregations do?
So a small thing that we can do to help answer that question. There are 1,000 congregations, and we're partnered with 70 groups. So we can't do a lot to answer that question. We do have some folks who will work with your social justice team, do some coaching, talk about local partnerships, and help support you as you're exploring local work and local partnerships.
That's helpful.
We do have one staff person, Heather Vickery is her name. She's amazing. And she lives in Seattle, so she's not far. So she could easily make a Denver area trip if that was of interest.
I'd like to get that information with you, because one of the committees I'm with is social justice.
Great. Well, I can get it to you through Steve.
Yeah.
No problem. Thanks, Heather. She's on sabbatical right now, so she's away for a minute, but she'll certainly be back by the fall. So we wish we could do more with that, but we hope that's somewhat helpful. Pink Haven does need safe places for travelers to stop. Is Colorado? It's not one of the really harmful states for trans people. Yeah. Yes.
Our governor is gay.
I met him. I met him last time I was in Colorado in Grand Junction. Lovely man. And I saw his husband on social media recently. Right. So if you could host someone who needs a home, this would be a great place for someone to come, because it's not like the Bay Area. It's not affordable to move. And the folks we're supporting are people who don't have the economic means just to pick up and move, because laws in their state have criminalized their very existence. So that's another way congregations are. And Laura is deeply involved with that work. Steve's had some correspondence with Laura. And Heather reports to Laura, so that's also a great connection.
I think it's going by too fast because I'm not catching that. So you're talking about hosting someone like long-term for a place for them.
Helping someone get settled in a new home. Right. So it might mean collecting furniture, helping them find an apartment. It might mean supporting them financially for a few months until they get a job. They're trying to be really explicit about what's needed so that congregations know before they get involved. And the UUA is working as well on this, and I think is going to be starting to provide more resources to congregations about this. We're in conversations with them. We're deeply connected with Pink Haven.
So Pink Haven
is our partner.
Contact.
No, you partner. You contact us. Pink Haven is a cover name. It's a small organization that is taking a great risk doing the work they're doing, and so we are the front face. We and some others are the front face for Pink Haven, so that the leaders aren't themselves. They're Indigenous queer people who would be a greater risk. We're all at risk.
Because I think there would be a lot of people, there'd be interest in our congregation in helping
And so do watch your email from the UUA as well, because I know they're trying to get a little more organized and do more to help congregations with that. We're really glad to help congregations with that. And yeah, so.
Will you coach us or the people we contact there on how to communicate things to our congregation so that we're not compromising things like Pink Haven in our correspondence or
Oh, that's so
in the
thoughtful.
text?
Yeah, that's thoughtful. I think anything you get from us would be safe to communicate. But Laura would a question like that, Laura would be great.
Okay.
She's our a director of congregational engagement, and she has a team of 3 or 4. One does coaching, they do different things. And so that's a yes, we can coach on that as well.
Good.
You may already know, but our local social justice committee is very involved with our local demonstrations, like No Kings,
Fantastic.
John Lewis,
Yep.
Get Trouble.
Yes. Coming up.
A lot of us on the social justice have been very involved in that sort of.
Isn't it exciting to get out there and see all those people?
It is.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's a small thing, but
Yeah.
so great.
And Clay and his wife are very active with indigenous
He was
rights
here.
and movements.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah,
I think you mentioned Alaska, but
yes.
Yeah.
And
Within-
Louisiana, yeah, many of our partners are indigenous, the Pacific Islands, of course.
yeah,
And may I share,
national energy.
that's right. We very exciting news that's actually not ready for public. But our board has approved, 30 years ago, somebody had 300 acres in Utah that they didn't want anymore, and they put it in their will to UUSC. We've had this, we tried to sell it 30 years ago, could not dump it. Since then, a wind farm has been developed on the land, and now geothermal is trying to develop it. And when that happened, we said, hold on, we just sold our building. We're trying to decolonize the way we work. Is it right for us to own land? No, what should we do with the land? So we've developed a relationship with the Paiute tribe of India, the neighboring, and we're about to return 300 acres of land to the
Oh,
Paiute
wow.
tribe
I have that.
Cool.
of Utah. Very, very excited for that, and hoping we'll be able to tell that story more publicly in partnership with the Paiute, because we want it to be in good relationship in the coming months. Y'all are amazing. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
coming and
coming here.
Thank you.
staying awake and thank you. It means so much. Please sign up for the Resistance Network. You good, Linda?
Yep.
We can end the recording.
Thank you for being
Yep.
with us, Linda.
Thank-
Appreciate it.
I really appreciated hearing you. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Mary Catherine.
Good.
Yeah. Accompanying individuals, individual parents with.
Oh, fantastic. Have you heard about the work at Gallup? You